Select Characters, where gaming meets analysis.
Hello and welcome to the end of the year extravaganza for the Select Characters podcast. I'm excited. I know you're all excited. It has been a great year for video games.
Oh, see what you did there.
Yeah, took it up times 52. And so we're excited to be here and just talk about all the cool stuff that has come out this year, because that's not hyperbole. It actually has been a really great year for video games.
Damn right.
And I've got, the ace number 1+ members of Select Characters here with me. We're all here. I've got Chris, Enrique, Ryan, and myself. And, today the format, what we're going to do is we're just kind of talk about some categories, some nominations, just games that we thought stood out in various sort of aspects, I guess, amongst themselves. We don't know which ones we're going to do exactly, but we got a decent list lined up. We got mechanics and story and multiplayer, which is probably Rocket League, spoiler alert. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I guess also right here at the front, I'm just going to get it out of the way that we will be spoiler heavy, not spoiler free. We're not going to worry about spoiling games for you. So if that's a problem for you, or you think that that might be a problem, you probably want to tune out now and come back after you've played the games we're talking about. I don't think I'm going to give another warning on that. So, caveat emptor, enter at your own risk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so let's go ahead. Let's cruise forward and let's talk about the best games of 2015.
So the people that have been listening to us for the better part of this year, they probably know that I'm pretty big on my stories, and there have been a lot of great stories this year. Before I start talking about my favorites, I want to open the floor to the rest and just talk about the narratives that you most enjoy playing through this year. But I'm going to start this off by mentioning the elephant in the room, at least for me, and that's The Witcher 3.
Interesting. I thought you'd say Life is Strange.
Yeah.
I was really anticipating that.
Right. I guess I have to justify that now, why I didn't choose Life is Strange. I really do love Life is Strange because it was just a fantastic game that made a very big impact on what I consider to be a good story for a game. But the way that the story was presented in The Witcher was so organic. I mentioned it on this very podcast, actually, that the world of The Witcher, it feels like you're not the hero of the world. You are just one person in a giant cog. You're just one of many people there. You've got your own personal story, while around you, there are all sorts of other stories going on. And the way that that's presented to you, the way the world's presented to you, the way the lore is presented to you, and the way that the trials and the tribulations of the main character and the main characters of the cast are presented to you, I thought was just absolutely fantastic. Life is Strange is a good second one for wholly different reasons. That one just wins for me in terms of atmosphere and in terms of pacing, which I thought was absolutely perfect. But the best story, probably The Witcher 3.
I'm going to disagree with you on that.
All right.
I love The Witcher. It's probably one of my favorite games this year, but not that I didn't like the story, but I don't think the story was all that great. Mainly because I think it was almost too organic to the point where it just felt like like you said, another adventure that Geralt's going on. There wasn't anything particularly like breathtaking or that jumped or stood out, apart from it. A lot of it was just, like with The Witcher 3, I love it because of its smaller segments. I love it that you have like those little independent monster hunting contracts. There's like a self-contained story in every town you visit. There's small little chains where you're trying to figure out, who murdered this lady's husband, or who, where this, widow that is suddenly, staying in a tower as a ghost came from. And those little stories are awesome. Like they're great little tidbits, but the main story, again, I think because there were so many things in between it that it almost felt like that main story just kind of got drowned out into the background.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's not a bad thing. I mean, I still like it, but it's just when I think of great stories this year that really stood in my mind, The Witcher isn't one of them.
It's not just the subject matter, it's the way that it's presented to you. That is why it wins for me.
Right.
I mean, the story, if you look at it from a distance, objectively, it is a pretty bog standard fantasy story, to be honest. But it's just the way that it's presented to me made such a big impact and got me sucked into every word and every new quest that I accepted, and that's why it wins for me.
Yeah, I think because I think 2 had a better story. Just with the whole, concept of like the dragon and siding with Yorvith, and when you get to see his path, and that for me was just like a lot more, just it had like that impact on it. And then when you realize like what the deal is with the dragon, and was it Braska, and like it's amazing. And when you put it against Witcher 3, the story, like you said, it's your typical kind of story. And I was hoping to get more interaction with the Wild Hunt, as it were. And they kind of just appear more as like little mini bosses throughout the game, rather than like this huge force that's kind of always in the background. Like I was expecting them to be the equivalent of what the Reapers were for the Mass Effect franchise.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, they were always sort of looming overhead, but they were never really the focal point, which ultimately made the Wild Hunt feel a bit like a lost chance, or like a missed chance, basically. Yeah. I will agree to that, definitely. But it's just something about the world, about that world and the way the story is told to you that made everything utterly compelling. And the well-written dialogue and the pretty great character development goes a long way into convincing me. Or it has convinced me.
Fair enough. I'll give it that. Now, for me, though, I think the story that stands out in my mind from this year was for Bloodborne.
Right.
It's the whole, like, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, even Bloodborne, like, that whole series has this habit of, it gives you, like, a very loose framework for what the main story is, and you find out a lot more about the lore and background characters just by reading things in game. Whether it be like small little bits of dialogue and exposition, or looking at items and, reading the captions for each item, description tells you background. And with Bloodborne, when you first pick it up and like just looking at the advertisements, it looks like this generic kind of like, dark fantasy story. You're a hunter, you're hunting, monsters and vampires, and this town's been overtaken, so you're there. Very simple. But as you're playing through the game and you start kind of collecting some of the items and some like these things like the eyes and the whole sanity meter, you start realizing that the story takes this complete left turn, and it goes into this weird Cthulhu, dark gods kind of style mythos. And it comes out of left field, but it's integrated so well in the game that the transition happens almost seamlessly. And before you know it, you're in a graveyard fighting a hunter that turns into a werewolf. Big deal. And then you're suddenly fighting these giant monolithic, like, lost ones, which for me, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I did really like the design of the world and the monsters and stuff. I haven't played it myself because I'm not quite masochistic enough to try a game that is in the same vein as the Dark Souls series. I just don't have the patience for it, to be honest. Right. But aesthetically speaking, it breathes atmosphere. And that's why I will probably always remember that game, because of the striking aesthetic. Mm-hmm. But story-wise, I was always under the impression that Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne were very, very minimal on the story front, and let everything open to interpretation, basically.
No, I mean, they are massive on the story front. The only thing is that they don't beat you over the head with it. The story itself, it's set in stone. It's a very concrete story, and it's very technical in how it proceeds. But the issue is it's presented in way of looking at artifacts and reading up on like lore with like in the game, and you kind of have to piece it together yourselves.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I get it.
One of my favorite things is Bloodborne has like the insight mechanic, where like you can collect bits of insight, which is the equivalent of humanity in the previous Souls games. And there's this cool little, I'd almost say an Easter egg, where if you get your insight actually high enough, at certain points in the game, when you walk out, you actually get to see the world look entirely different. I think on one of the cathedrals, you actually get to see some of these like old Lovecraftian kind of Cthulhu style gods just kind of hanging over the world and looking down at you. And you don't get to see this whatsoever unless your insight is up to that, like to that level. And that's what I mean about like that kind of story that gets presented to you in a really subtle way that just shocks you when it comes out.
Right. So it's more the world building that makes it stand out for you than like an actual like traditional narrative.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's a valid reason.
Yeah, it's a lot of different aspects of story stuff. Okay. For me, I guess I'm going to go with 3 standout stories for me this year. And those were Metal Gear Solid 5, The Beginner's Guide, and Her Story.
Oh, The Beginner's Guide.
I forgot about Metal Gear Solid 5. That was actually really well done. I liked it.
I think that perhaps like implementation-wise, it wasn't the best story, but like as a story, it was cool. Like going to all these different places and like the throat virus thing and like compelling cast of characters. Like when you're playing the game, I guess it all feels very fragmented, and like the way that they present that story to you through the tapes and through the cutscenes feels scattered. but like if you lump it all together as like a series of events or actions, like it's pretty cool, man. Like that story actually had like emotional impact on me. Like like when you lose Quiet, you know, like that was like a crazy scene. Like I was like, ow, that's intense. And I felt the same thing with the beginner's guide, like an actual like weird sort of directionless emotion. Like when I finished that game.
Yeah, the beginner's guide was pretty special actually, because that game doesn't end up where you think it's going to end up, because it just starts like a sort of tech demo by this guy saying like, oh, I know this guy who makes games and I want to sort of run you through them and tell you why I think the design is compelling. And where it ends up is it's not where you think it's going to end up, because it ends with the narrator feeling guilt and regret and sorrow and sadness. And even though you don't really have the emotional connection to that guy's work that the narrator does, you still sort of start to feel.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, and it was doing all those weird, like, narrative tricks, like that last level with that crazy lock code and the sort of, like, invisible laser field, like, walking through it. Yeah. Like, if the narrator wasn't doing the things that he does, like, altering this guy's creations, then he would have never seen that, like, message at the end that's like, yo, dude, leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah. Right?
So like it all just sort of blends together, and it just like that. I thought it was great, like as a story. So I don't know, like if we're looking like actual stories or if we're looking at like the way that they're told. Like I guess it all just amalgamates into one sort of package. Yeah. But that's probably the standout one for me. Her story was an amazing story, just on its own, just very nuanced and sort of discovering the bits and pieces of that as you go through it. And unlocking that like overall narrative. So, I mean, that one was really good, but I wouldn't call it the best. I think for me, it's probably the beginner's guide. That's probably my top story of the year.
That one's really, really good. So,
cool.
Ryan.
Well, I've been quiet this whole time because I listed out, when we were talking before the show, I listed out all the games that I played a significant amount of, and none of them have stories. The most I've played this year of a story-driven game is Life is Strange, and I played that for about an hour this morning. So it's kind of surprising for me, but yeah, I didn't really play any story-driven games. I played, Grand Theft Auto 5, but I didn't play the story mode in that. I just kind of messed around online with friends. So yeah, I guess Life is Strange is my best one this year.
I'm completely cool with that.
Are you just not attracted to like story in games in general?
Normally, I don't have an aversion to it, but I'm not particularly drawn to it. I used to be, but I think in the past year I've gotten more like immersed in games that I can just pick up and start playing, and I don't really have to keep track of a story. Right,
so more piecemeal.
Yeah, and I think that's why I picked up Life is Strange, because it's like it's episodic, so I can do it piecemeal. So yeah, that was it for me. I'll have more to say in the other topics, but. Not much for story.
Kind of want to talk about Life is Strange, but I know that Enrique hasn't played it yet, and that Ryan is playing it right now, so I can't really like go into too much detail about why I like that story.
I think it's so far I'm pretty intrigued with it. It's really interesting, just the whole time dynamic. I don't want to reveal too much, but just going forwards and backwards in time is kind of you got to get used to it.
That game really shines when it develops the characters. Like the power of that game lies in the very small personal moments you have with only one or two characters present, and especially the dynamic between Chloe and Max. It's fantastic. It's really, really well done. And I'm not ashamed to say that at one point that like I don't cry all that often. But Life is Strange did make me cry at one point, because there was just some moments in that game. The build up to those moments is so well done and so well written, and the music gets cued in at the right time. And I was just left in awe of how well it was directed. So yeah, it's a fantastic game.
When I went into it, I was kind of thinking about how you've talked about how the game is so emotionally it impacts you emotionally quite a bit. And I was like, I don't know if this is really going to be that intense. And then within the first, hour of playing, my jaw dropped once already. So
yeah, see, that game sort of manages to grab you in a very unexpected way. And it's pretty hard to put into words why it exactly does that, but it's just the sum of its parts works out on such a great level. If you're like me, and apparently if you're like you're sort of attuned to that sort of vibe, I guess, you get drawn in. It's the presentation in that game is just really well done.
I think you really, I can't pinpoint what it is about Max, but you get drawn into her character.
Yeah.
Like I get drawn into particularly like the narrative voiceover stuff, but that's what, like, it just really pulls me into her character and like what decision she would be making in that situation.
Yeah, plus she's very relatable because she is essentially every teenager ever.
Student. Yeah. Yeah.
So, the people who say that she's too cringy, or they're lying. Like, they were exactly that when they were 18. So I think it's quite realistic in its cringiness, if you will.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't think like I don't even want to call it like cringy, because there were some moments where I'm like, that's kind of embarrassing for that person. But they're a bunch of high school kids. That's how they're supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't get why people bring that up as a negative point, because it's trying to portray people from a certain age group. And if I remember how I was and how the people I know were when we were 18, it's pretty damn close to the fucking mark.
Yep, I totally agree. And and I think that the voice acting is really good. Not the best in the world, but it's above average.
Chloe especially is very well done.
The character portrayals actually make that game. I think, like, as a story, like a series of events, like this happened, then this happened, then this happened. You have something that's on the line between good and great, but not like outstanding, not amazing. Just like a well-written series of events, but building upon that platform with the way they shape the characters and like all of their different sort of nuances and things. Yeah. Like, I think that really adds so much to like this story that's, good, but not mind-blowing.
You're entitled to your opinion.
And
jury's still out
they
for
get
me.
a lot of mileage out of that, I think.
Yeah, well, all the game has is, atmosphere and interpersonal drama, and it just tends to do both those things very well most of the time. So yeah, there's not a lot they could have done wrong in that respect.
So that's good. That's interesting. And that actually brings me to like a topic I want to talk about later, like a story versus like what's the distinction between a story as like a series of events versus like how it's implemented and all the different factors that go into it.
Something for 2016, that one?
Yeah, sneak preview 2016. Yeah.
Get a look in the kitchen there.
Yeah, so like as we're sitting here trying to say like, what are the standout stories, it's sort of like, well, like all these different aspects, like you could break this down into like 10 different things that are aspects of a story and like say who did like a great job at each one of those.
Yeah.
So, sort of evaluating those factors and their different weights and things, I think is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've made the distinction here anyway that a story is like the directed experience you get, like the sort of red line through everything that you do. Well, a narrative can basically be anything that tells a story within the world. Especially like Bethesda games are really good at that. Like the random bit of paper in some hut in the middle of nowhere that tells like a very sad story about two lovers or something. You know what I mean, right? You know what I'm referring to. That I think that is really well done when it's implemented, and that's actually like we would be going remiss if we won't mention Fallout 4, because it does a really good job at world building. It does. It just does. And the story that the world tells is really good.
I said it does a great job with the little world building, but main story I could give a rat's ass about.
Yeah, that's always the problem with Bethesda games, isn't it? Like the story is way more compelling than the story they're trying to tell within that world.
Don't you have a son?
Yeah. I guess.
I guess that wraps us about up. That's some of our favorite stories from 2015.
I guess it is.
Oh wait, Pillars of Eternity. You found out different aspects about the actual death of a god. That game had a pretty cool story.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Huh. Just throw that in there at the end.
Okay, cool. Okay, anything else? Anyone? No, we're all cool?
Nope, that's it for me.
All right.
All right, so moving on from the story discussion, now we're going to talk about some of our favorite mechanics from 2015, some of the coolest things that we've seen in games that we think are clever, we think are interesting, and so on, or just in general. What do you think some of the best mechanics have been in games that came out this year?
Okay, I'm just going to hijack the start of this conversation to continue the end of the last conversation. I'm going to talk about Life is Strange again, because the time travel mechanic was a very elegant solution to a common problem in these Telltale style games. When you're in a conversation and you choose somebody and your character has a habit, especially in Telltale games, they have a habit of saying something that has a completely different meaning than what you thought they would say when you pick the answer. And Life is Strange, they solve that by allowing you to rewind time and choose a different conversation option. And if you don't like that one, you can rewind again and choose all the ones available.
So basically, save scumming.
With. Essentially that, but in universe, and it has a story, not verification.
Yeah, narratively justified, quick save, quick load.
Nice.
Justification,
okay.
That's the one. Yeah, it's a narrative justification, actually. Yeah. And I thought that was a very elegant solution to that particular problem.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, if people are going to save scum anyway, might as well make it a part of the game.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, like I said, I only played a little bit of it, but I thought it was a really interesting mechanic, because I haven't played very many games that alter time, and it's just it's interesting to have that new thing to consider. You know,
oh man, let me tell you about this great little series called Prince of Persia: Sands of Time.
But I don't know.
I was going to say Braid.
Yeah, I was going to say Braid. Like, I haven't played Braid, but that's the only other game.
So tell me more. All right, Life is Strange. Great. Really good mechanic. Ties in with the overall story. Actually has a big impact on the story besides just, oh, hey, by the way, you can choose different dialogue choices. Like, it's actually integral to the entire experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that mechanic affects, you know, how I play the game in the future, because like Chris was saying, you can just go back and pick whichever option you like the best. And I'm curious where that goes.
Yeah,
I'm sure
just have to wait and
I'm
see.
sure it goes somewhere, because I feel like if it didn't, it'd be a very one-dimensional thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they give it another dimension and then it stops being cool.
But I mean, I'm sure it goes somewhere with the story. Like it progresses somehow.
Yeah.
So,
Ryan, Rocket League.
Well, okay. There were two games that stuck out in my head for my favorite, you know, mechanics of 2015. And first was Heroes of the Storm, because that game, I mean,
solid.
It's just a good game, and it has enough game modes that it keeps it refreshing while it still keeps it competitive. But the reason why Heroes lost to Rocket League for me was because I felt like in Heroes every button press was like a quarter, not even a quarter, maybe like an eighth of a second late. And I don't know if that was on my end, or, you know, if it was my internet or something like that, or maybe the game is just clunky, but I felt like the controls were very clunky when I played it. Not so much that it was unplayable, but just not as crisp as like League of Legends, for example.
Okay, I never really felt that was a problem, nor did I ever notice a delay, I guess.
Really? Yeah, it's like if I was watching a show and the audio was like 2 frames off. Like, that's what it feels like. It's almost there, but it's not quite as just fresh and crisp as some other games I've played.
Yeah. I don't know if I've experienced that, but I'm trying to think back over it in my head. And if you're right, it is very, very small. It's like just a couple frames.
Yeah.
Like between your thing and your action. It is tiny.
It's enough to notice, though, and it's enough to frustrate me sometimes.
Might it be because you're used to League of Legends?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have a frame of reference there because I don't play League of Legends or Dota, so I don't really know how those...
It extends to other games too. Like, I'll play Counter-Strike, which is another really tight game in terms of movement, and it also made Heroes feel just like a tiny bit slow. So I'm not sure what that.
I think it has to do with because I know what you're talking about, and I think it has to do kind of with the global cooldown on some of the abilities, because I feel like when the global cooldown starts and resets doesn't always line up perfectly with like when you actually cast the move. And I think that might be what you're referring to, because it's not enough to make the game feel clunky to me, but I know there is something about like you find yourself double clicking or like double tapping the mouse real quick because it almost feels like your first hit didn't register.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So yeah, I mean, so that was kind of weird, but I still rank Heroes pretty highly because of just the different game modes, and they're not so unique from each other that you're playing a different game every time, but they're unique enough that you're like every game is still interesting, and it's interesting to see what maps get picked and that kind of thing. But
it's still it's still a variation on the same concept on every map. Essentially, it's just the mechanics make the focus of every map different. Sort of draw players to specific points at specific times and stuff. And I find that was actually quite cool, especially compared to stuff like League of Legends or Dota, which is just the 3 lanes in the jungle, and that's basically it. In Heroes of the Storm, you've got like that narrator, so there's a bit of a story to every map as well, and every map looks different, and every map has a slightly different mechanic that you have to take care of. It's always in the back of your mind. So that was really well done, I think.
Well, I think what they do with Heroes is because I mean Dota 2 and League have those in certain maps where, God, I forget which one it is in Dota, but there's if you kill like one of the ancients, it gives you like your whole team a power boost. And like there's specific characters like junglers that are made to actually go out and like you take out mercenary camps yourself, level yourself up, and then you're in charge of taking out the ancient for your team, and then that way you guys get the boost. But it's not really a make or break thing. With Heroes of the Storm, they took those little side like PvE events and they almost made it like mandatory to the overall progress of the game, where if your team doesn't defeat the opposing angel and the celestial courtyard like map, or if your team doesn't actually grab coins to feed the pirate ship, it does put your team at a distinct disadvantage. So it almost, because I don't say it forces players to engage in that, but it almost like encourages to the point where you'd be a fool not to, and it creates like that team battle mechanic, which again, like it really, really adds to the gameplay.
Yeah,
I agree.
But Heroes ultimately did fall to Rocket League because, I mean, come on, it's Rocket League.
Rocket League was just crisp. It was just like put together in general.
It's just it feels so polished. I haven't encountered a single bug in Rocket League. Like the worst thing I've encountered is lag. I mean, it's just such a crisp game, and the concept is so simple, but it's so reproducible and so it's just entertaining at its core. Yeah, because it's modeled after a real sport, so it's like it's something that obviously tons of people enjoy.
Yeah, boosting and flying and turning and like it
and it's so complex. It's like the gameplay mechanics are totally different than from your physical mechanics on your controller, because there's so much complexity to that. But then ultimately the game is just soccer.
Yeah. Plus the cars have actual weight to them, which you have to think about when you're jumping around and stuff.
Yeah, it's great, and I think they're adding awesome game modes like the Mutator Mashup stuff, and I know they're adding hockey in the next update, and it's just all really cool. And Rocket League takes the cake. It's one of my favorite games of the year, and like right now, it's one of my favorite games I've ever played. So yeah
it is
great.
Very good.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that was it for me. Rocket League was just the best in terms of mechanics.
That's a fair assessment, I think. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Like, it's not often that you get a game that plays so nice that every hour that you put into that game is one where you're just having fun all the damn time.
Yep. And there's nothing that makes you, like, get frustrated with the game itself. You can get frustrated about how you're playing or frustrated at other players, but I never get frustrated at Rocket League. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I never get frustrated at the controls or anything like that.
Yeah, because the game is really easy to understand. Like, its mechanics are really easy to understand, plus the controls are really, really tight. So when something goes wrong, it's usually yourself that's to blame and not the game or anything else. Yeah, I agree.
And I like how clean the evaluation of that game is. Like, if you were looking at Rocket League and trying to say what makes this game great, it's just mechanics. Like it's just like if you when you're trying to like decide the aspects of it that are good, like mechanics, like that's all you need. Just one category sums up that game beautifully. I like that.
I mean, it also helps that like they kind of went in a very minimalistic approach with it too, because there is so much room for them to kind of like overcomplicate things with given how diverse the cars are and like the modifications you can do. They're all purely aesthetic, but they could have done the route where you have different speeds, different accelerations, different grips, handling and stuff, and that would have completely, I think it would have made a huge clusterfuck, but they chose to just focus on really small, crisp, gameplay mechanics, and that's it. And I think that's why the game stands out so much.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely one of the biggest surprises of this year, if I do say so myself.
Easily.
Yeah, it really surprised me too. I thought when I first got it, I didn't think I'd play it this late into ever, actually.
Yeah, I get you. Another one, and this one is a late contender, I guess, but it's the fucking flying mechanics in Elite Dangerous, especially when you have to dock at a space station. I find that
do not press
so
tab
enjoyable.
when you're
Oh my
docking.
god, do not press tab. There were so many times that I thought I was like engaging with some sort of interface and I needed to press tab, but you didn't. You didn't. It would just boost me somewhere.
You just boost, crash, get a fine, and then
To put out your landing gear when you go in there. If you got your landing gear out, you can't boost.
Well, that's good to know now.
After the fact. I mean, I had to learn it the hard way as well. I accidentally pressed that when I was nearly docking, and I accidentally bumped into the side of the space station, and they fucking fined me.
Did you tell him you were in a hurry?
Did you tell me it was your first day?
Yeah,
Incompetence is not a good excuse, I'm afraid.
you're right, though. The docking and launching mechanics in Elite are actually pretty fun.
Yeah, plus, every time you see that huge space station, that sort of feeling overtakes you, like that childlike sense of wonder and mirth, I guess it is.
I get the feeling of how do I approach this thing in a way that I can actually get inside it. That's always my
Have you ever
first
gotten
thought.
hit by
Like,
a player when you're trying to leave or enter?
Yeah. Tell me this, how can you be cut off in space?
I guess that's like one of those universal constants. Like, for some reason, all public bathrooms will always be wet.
Wait, death,
no matter what.
Death, taxes, and people cutting you off in fucking space?
yeah. Like
Jesus.
you could literally approach from any direction. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. For me, Fultoning shit in Metal Gear Solid 5 is amazing.
Oh, God.
That's a really, really great mechanic. I love it so much. Just not only because actually doing it is fun and hilarious and like well animated, whether it's people or things or whatever, but just as a solution to the problem of how do we get all this crap out of the combat zone and into your inventory, essentially.
Yeah, in case people don't know what the term refers to, Fultoning is basically when you attach the balloon on an item, it ricochets up in the air and then it gets grabbed by an aircraft.
Yeah, and it just shoots away into the sky. And
Hilariously so, I might add.
And, like, how do you just... I mean, it's just incredible from like, okay, you can only carry so many things. There's carry weight. No, that sucks. Like, you don't want things to just phase out of existence because that's kind of weird at the same time too. And just, it solves so many of these problems in an elegant way that is also really, really fun to do. And I like it because of all that.
Yeah, and I know it sounds like being petty, but I know like one of the things that always bothers me in games is like when you go out to recruit like different party members and stuff like that, there's always this really awkward situation where like, oh, you need to recruit the scientist. And when you get to that person, there's that weird discussion the developers have is like, hey, do we turn this into a really awkward escort quest where they have to get into safety, or do we just make the person kind of wander off and disappear into the distance, or like what happens?
Or how about we attach a balloon to him and just shoot him up into the sky?
Yeah, and
you
it
don't
was
have to
like
worry
it gave
about
you the perfect answer. Just hey, knock him out, balloon to the belt, and see ya.
And I mean, for everything, tanks, jeeps, cargo containers, machine guns, just
dude,
use it everywhere.
Freaking ravens!
Awesome.
You can fault it like a raven. Shoot a bird out of the sky and then just send it back up to the sky.
That's amazing.
Is it a waste of resources? Absolutely, but is
it worth it? Yes, it is.
Yeah, and that's why it's great. I mean, it's great because it's everything. You know, like mechanically, it's great. In world narrative, it's great. It just sort of hits all the points that you want out of a good mechanic.
Yeah, it looks insanely fun.
I also liked the sewage mechanic in City Skylines, where if you didn't do it right, your sewage would end up into your water
drinking
pipes.
Water.
Yeah,
always go downstream.
So that was a mistake I made right off the bat.
Man, you know, and that actually really made me upset with SimCity, or just looking back on when it released, because they actually had that mechanic in SimCity, and because of the fact that it had the multiplayer aspect to it, it was entirely possible for your city that just happens to be upstream to dump all their polluted water into another player's drinking supply.
I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
problem solved.
It just sucks that the game just wasn't up to snuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, because I mean, all the cities are the server it plays on. You're essentially like the plots of land are right next to each other in terms of like player base. So if you pick plot A, player B can pick the plot right next to you, and then the way you do your resources can actually affect them and their city. So if you have a massive industrial zone on like the very border of your city and they happen to be downwind from you, guess where all that pollution is going to go?
That's absolutely that's hilarious. Like I know about the shared resources and trading and stuff, but I didn't really know that.
Yeah, it works both ways. So
was a mechanic in there.
It just sucks that they didn't. I don't know. It was a good idea in theory. They just wasn't implemented well. So I mean, that's a missed opportunity for a mechanic.
Yeah, there's a lot in new SimCity that wasn't implemented well, unfortunately. But then again, we've got City Skylines now, so no harm, no foul. I guess.
Which did the whole city building thing really well again. I mean, that's probably one of my definitely one of my top games in terms of mechanics. Just the whole the way you can organize your system and or organize your city and have everything working, and even the traffic mechanics are great, and how you can manage congestion, whether it be bulldozing the road and putting in you, or just hoping to God that you can build enough exit ramps to slowly disperse the traffic out.
Yeah, that was pretty great. That game starts off as a city builder, but after about 3 or 4 hours, it turns into Congestion Simulator 2015.
Yeah.
And that is really fun because that's a completely different problem and it requires a completely different mindset to solve that particular problem. I loved it. I loved every minute with City Skylines. It's just a great game.
Yeah. I think another game for me, which I feel kind of bad because I guess it's nowhere near as impactful as the ones you guys mentioned, but Batman Arkham Knight, the driving mechanics, mainly because it's such a stray from the original focus of the series. Origins, Arkham Asylum, all those, none of them had the Batmobile as a main mode of gameplay. And when they mentioned that they were actually implementing that in Arkham Knight, a lot of people were really apprehensive because you're like, oh great, you're forcing a driving mechanic into a game that has no business, even having one in there. But it was implemented in such a smooth way that I think it just stands out for me. The game is just on the right side of arcadey, where it feels really tight. It controls perfectly. You can go back and forth between a combat mode where it lets you go, kind of strafe left and right. So you can, shoot out tanks and vehicles and then go back to your normal race mode. And then they implement almost a catapult seat where it lets Batman shoot up into the sky and you can immediately go into your glide. So to take a racing mechanic almost that has no business ever being in a series and implementing it so seamlessly, I think definitely wins at least some praise.
Awesome. It sounds like a good solution for that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Other highlights. Renowned Explorers has a really interesting battle mechanic in it that's based off of emotions.
Was that the Double Fine game?
No, it was made by Abbey Games, the same people who made Rouse.
Okay.
Oh, Rouse. Yeah.
Rouse.
Yeah, same people who made that. I guess this is their next game. The battle mechanics, I mean, it could be anything. I'm not in love with it because it's emotions, but that's what it is, so that's how I'm going to explain it to you. But it's 3 emotions: friendly, devious, and aggressive, which is your normal standard attacks. And so depending on what the style or emotion of the attacks that you use against the enemy are, you shift the mood of the entire battlefield. And the same is true with your enemies.
Nice.
So you have to sort of manipulate that in a way that, I guess it's kind of similar to the judges system in the old Final Fantasy Tactics games.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Because you'll get a bonus depending on your mood, like the mood that you finish the encounter with. But separate from that, there's also the mood of the battle itself while it's taking place, and certain moods counter other moods. So you'll be trying within your turn to like, okay, I need to be devious here so I can get the most damage, but I need to switch back to friendly by the end so that I can have higher defense for when it's their turn.
Right.
So like as a turn-based tactical thing, it's really compelling, and different attacks change the mood different amounts. Like if you kill somebody, you get 2 dots instead of 1. And just trying to work with all those systems at the same time was a really compelling mechanic for me this year. Yeah, it's really well done.
Especially when they put in like in a medium kind of like turn-based combat, because it gives you more time to actually be focused and flesh out those little tactics.
Mm-hmm. It's not hyper complicated. I mean, it's basically rock paper scissors, but you also have all the iterations at the same time. Like you're aggressive, but they're devious. You're aggressive, but they're friendly. Like there's like a whole list, and they all have different bonuses that you can use to manipulate the battlefield. And but like I said, while you're doing that, you also want to finish the encounter with an overall mood to get the award. And the way that all those things lock together was a really good mechanic this year.
Man, I want to play that game.
I
think you've just sold it for me.
Yeah, it's good. Where it kind of fell off for me is I realized that like the maximum level of play in that game is a lot of memorization.
Right.
But don't let that get in the way of having fun with it, because it is fun on its own. But it's like if you want to play at the highest level, you need to memorize a ton of shit.
Oh god.
Fine.
I guess going along with indie titles,
it's gonna be a problem.
Darkest Dungeon had a really cool mechanic. The stress meter was actually really fun because it kind of made you think about how kind of the risk reward factor when you're going through the dungeons, because you have your characters. You go through like the little mini dungeons that they put out, and on top of having your regular health meter, you have a little stress meter. And if the stress meter gets too high, your characters can actually get certain maladies where they can develop schizophrenia, they can develop fearful personalities, and they actually implement something to the point now where they can actually have heart attacks. So you could have a perfectly healthy person just have a heart attack because their stress is too high in the game. And it's cool because it kind of makes you wonder, like when you're going through the little dungeons and you're kind of at about a half health point, but your stress is already like off the charts. You have to decide if you want to kind of push on and beat the dungeon or if you want to retreat. But retreating also raises your stress level. So it's this really cool mechanic that you kind of go about solving. And they even implemented a character now, which is, I think it's called the Abomination, where the character actually transforms between a human and a monstrosity. But even though it does high damage, it also actually causes stress to the rest of your party as well. So that's kind of like almost like a glass cannon thing you have going on.
Yeah, I'd be freaked out if I saw something like that.
Definitely.
Let's see. Anything else to hit? Invisible Ink did turn-based stealth. Incredible.
They did actually, yeah. That's a really fun one.
This year, that was really cool.
Between the being able to like with the different characters hacking and just the line of sight you get with the actual enemy troops is really fun.
Yeah. And like the actual way that it creates puzzles with line of sight. Like when you get spotted, that's not the end of the that's not the end of the road. There's like multiple ways to mitigate that, kind of move around. But they did turn-based stealth in a way that flows and is actually compelling to play. So, I mean, kudos to them for that one.
Oh, that sounds interesting as well. There's a couple of games that you mentioned that I've completely spaced out on because of the pretty insane amount of games that cater to my interest that came out this year. But it seems like I've got my Christmas holiday sorted then.
Yeah, it's been one hell of a year. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Anybody else want to give any shout outs to any games with great mechanics in 2015?
Well, it's not a new mechanic, but like the emphasis is laid on a bit more this time around. There's a new expansion out for Knights of the Old Republic. Or not the Old Republic, I mean the Star Wars MMO made by BioWare. And it's a return to that sort of classic illusion of choice type stuff that you get in BioWare games. Mm-hmm. And it's just nice to see them return to something that actually influences how your companions think about you and stuff. Like instead of your companions saying things, doing things like approve of what you're saying or disapprove of what you're saying, they are impressed by what you're saying now, or they will remember that you said that, or they'll remember your heroism and stuff. So it's not really a completely new mechanic, and that's why it's not really a pick for me. It's just an honorable mention. Like, well done, BioWare. You know what the fans want, and you gave it to them. So, yeah.
Nice. I feel like I could just say Super Mario Maker and just roll forward, right? Like,
yeah,
everything. Like, I mean, that's an incredible mechanical game. Like, it's neat. They're doing a lot of cool stuff there.
No argument there, man. It seems like an amazing game and an amazing toolkit for people who want to make their own Mario levels.
Yeah,
so,
there's nothing to even explain.
Yeah, exactly. I think that game set out to do one thing and one thing only, and it did it amazingly. It's a completely accomplished effort, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Shout outs to Nom Nom Galaxy for making a game like a building game that uses a controller that works well. And that about wraps me up.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. All right, let's move on forward to our next category.
So multiplayer games are probably my favorite. I guess if you want to call it a genre, but it's not really a genre. It's my favorite aspect of games is the multiplayer. So let's talk about our favorite multiplayer games of 2015. I'll go first with mine, which the game isn't from 2015, but the game mode is. So I'm going to count it, and it's Battle Royale from H1Z1.
Called it.
With a close second to Rocket League, because Rocket League, the multiplayer aspect is pretty cool, and it's fun to like talk to other people in that game, because I feel like most people are pretty cheery when they play it. But H1Z1, there's just something about it that there's no time for messing around when you're interacting with other players in that game. And everything's very panicked in it, and there's just a lot of intensity to it. So that's why it's my favorite, because I'd rather have something really cool that gets my heart beating rather than, just messing around with some people online.
I remember you're a really big fan of DayZ, and it seems like H1Z1 falls short in terms of the survival aspect that DayZ provides, but it definitely gives you that PvP aspect that nobody really enjoys in DayZ when you're out trying to survive, and it kind of puts it in an enclosed space, which kind of makes it a little bit more enjoyable because then you're on it on your own terms.
Yeah, I like it because everyone knows kind of what's up. Yeah. We all know no one's friendly, no one's going to help you out unless they're on your team. It's just a complete free-for-all, and like you said in DayZ, it's like sometimes that multiplayer aspect ruins your day. Like when you get killed and you don't want to be killed, or it seemed like it was random because you didn't see the guy or whatever.
Or when you spend 2 hours looting a house and then the guy you're with decides to just stick an axe to your head for no reason.
Yeah, it can kind of ruin your day, but at the same time, it can really make your day if you're on the right end of that exchange. Right. But I like if you go and play Battle Royale, every time it's just gonna be really intense all the way up to when you die. So yeah, that's just why it's the best for me, because it's just heart pounding, like hands shaking the whole time you're playing it, and it's co-op. I love co-op. I love co-op stuff.
Must have made a pretty big impact on you, because that's a pretty recent discovery, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, a month ago or so. But yeah, I play it whenever I can get a group together. Not a huge fan by myself. I'd rather play Rocket League by myself in terms of multiplayer, but if I have a group of people, yeah, H1Z1, Battle Royale.
No, that's good. I mean, for me, for multiplayer, I'd say it's between Destiny or Helldivers. Destiny, because I'm a big fan of just the MMO genre in general. I like that kind of social aspect that comes with them, especially when you're doing raids and everyone has the roles depending on it. And Destiny just, it did a really good job of kind of streamlining that experience. So you have small fire teams of 3 when you're doing your regular daily missions, and then you have the raids that are 6 people. It's a really good size because the mechanics aren't overly complex to the point where, it's going to fuck it up if some one person dies. But at the same time, they're challenging enough to where everybody on the team needs to know their role. And with 6 people, it makes the communication really, really, really smooth. So that's awesome.
I'm with you on Destiny, definitely.
Yeah. And Helldivers is just stupid fun. It's a top-down, kind of like a twin-stick shooter. It reminds me of Starship Troopers, the video game, pretty much. It's just you against a bunch of aliens. You have teammates, and there's friendly fire, which is freaking amazing, because when you call in airdrops or grenades, it's entirely possible to crush your teammates. It's super fun.
Yeah, I've yet to play that game, but it looks a lot of fun, and it's pretty hard, isn't it?
It can be challenging, because, it's a twin-stick shooter. It's just pretty much, you against a planet full of aliens, and, there are chances when you get overwhelmed, because it's just wave after wave of aliens the kind of the further into space you get or further into the territory. But it's just got that really cool multiplayer aspect where it's, I don't know, it makes the cooperation really fun. Because you also, in a way, have to watch out for each other. Because, I can drop a turret that'll attack anything that moves, but it is entirely possible for myself or even my teammates to get caught up in that turret. So, like, if person A drops a turret, person B immediately needs to throw down and, like, tell everybody to go prone. And you need to wait until that kind of deactivates. It's really fun. And the friendly fire, I've never had an instance where I got pissed off because I died to friendly fire. It's always hilarious.
If I may, I want to jump back to Destiny a bit because that is definitely, I think that's in the top 3 of my favorite multiplayer games.
It's just streamlined
of this year. It is. I don't like it for the same reasons that you do though, because I don't really raid. I don't know a lot of people who play that game and I don't really want to find people online to play with. So I usually just play the Crucible and I love the way that that's set up, from the loading screen to the music to the design of the maps themselves. There's a lot of verticality on the multiplayer maps. So there's a lot of potential for shit to go down on literally 360 degrees around you. And I really, really like that. Plus the maps are really well designed.
What are the other two?
Heroes of the Storm. I think I played that game probably the most out of any game I played this year. I've probably been playing that at least 3 or 4 times, sometimes 7 times a week, ever since I got into the alpha. And it's just so enjoyable for the reasons that we've mentioned before on the podcast, on this very episode, actually. The mechanics are just interesting. I like the characters as well because I've just got connection with Blizzard IP, because I've been playing Blizzard games for as long as I can remember. And it's just great to walk around a map as Sylvanas or as the demon hunter from Diablo, Oh, yeah. It's such a fun game. It's just too bad that the community is getting more toxic by the week.
I was gonna say that's what rules Heroes out for me is, it suffers from the same community as any MOBA.
Yeah.
And it's just
the thing is,
but it's real fun.
Yeah, it is. And there's a mute all button now, so you can just mute everybody. Problem fucking solved. You can still hear pings and stuff, so you are in contact with the rest of your team. You just don't have to don't have to hear the racist vitriol getting sent to your general direction when they think that you're doing something wrong, or when you actually fuck up, which always happens, But that game is fantastic. It's just something that Blizzard does to games, right? They take old concepts and sort of strip away what they think is not necessary, like streamline the entire thing, and then re-release it in a completely different shiny package. They did it with Warcraft. They did it with Warhammer as well. And now they do it with Heroes of the Storm. It's just a fantastic game.
Did you ever have any problems with queue times when you were playing?
No, not really.
What counts as a problem with queue times?
I don't know, but wherever I'm at, whenever I try to quick match, it takes like 4 minutes.
Yeah, I have that same thing.
And
especially when I play with friends who are, like on other sides of the country, for it to find a server that's like a good fit for everybody, it takes forever.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but that is a bummer, but it's not enough of a bummer that it stopped me from saying that game is great overall, but I just feel like it's something that like should be pointed out.
Yeah. I have that sometimes. It has been becoming more of a problem recently, like the past month or so, but that's usually only with Quick Match, and I hardly ever play Quick Match anymore. I usually just play Hero League, and the queues are usually within a minute.
I bet that's the problem. Because Ryan, you're not up to the Hero League, are you?
Nah.
So maybe that's it. Like maybe everybody is like moved on. Everybody hit level 30 and they're in the Hero League.
Oh.
And we're just like left straggling. Like maybe that's it.
I don't know.
Maybe they need like a big influx of new people to like help buoy us up or something.
Well, that's why they've got themselves into a bit of controversy over the past few weeks, because they've got the whole Refer a Friend program there now, which has opened the entire game up to people making Smurfs and making the starter user experience a bit of a hell. So, well done, Blizzard.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
And the third one is probably Elite Dangerous, because it is a multiplayer game, even though largely play it as a single player game, but it is one giant universe. You can encounter other players. And why I like that as a multiplayer experience is there's not a lot of things that are cooler than coming back from a supply run somewhere and go into a station and then see other people flying around, and people are just talking in character about the holes that they got or what they saw out in deep space and stuff. And it makes the world feel alive, even though it doesn't happen all that often. I think that's, I really enjoyed that.
Cool.
That's basically it for me in terms of multiplayer, I guess. Heroes of the Storm, it's just, I can't stop playing that game.
Yeah, it's tough not to just duck back in there when you're just like suffering from a little bit of like video game ennui and you're like, I don't know what to play. And then you're like, okay, Heroes of the Storm. Like I could jump in, get a quick match, and it's just always sort of there and always sort of fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think deserving of the criticisms that perhaps it's less, I don't know, like less like Dota or less like League, because I mean, it's not meant to be as complicated as those, like it purposefully.
They've stopped pretending like they want to go, toe to toe with the other big names in the MOBA genre. And they sort of start to realize now, like, wait, we are actually not like them. So let's just stop pretending like we are. So now you get like a whole bunch of crazy heroes and crazy maps and stuff, and they are fully committing to the bit. And I think that in of itself makes the game stand out.
That's awesome.
Oh man, speaking of crazy heroes, have you had a chance to try Cho'Gall yet?
Yes, I got it on launch day. It was
okay, so the mechanic for Cho'Gall is basically 2 players have to play him. One player controls movement, the other player controls the attacks.
It's fucking hilarious.
I can't imagine that.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty funny.
Like, how does that work?
Oh, it's great. Like you can't really play it with random people.
Yeah.
You have to be in a group with somebody else.
Well, I think there's a limit where like you can only play as him if you're queued up with like a friend.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, okay, because I was going to say, like, I mean, the closest thing to that in any other game is, like, bottom lane from League of Legends, because the 2 people have to have so much synergy, because really...
Still not.
Yeah, it's not
No,
even close. It's like, the level of communication required is so much higher. When you're both...
Yeah, this one, it's not so bad because one of the person moves. So, like, if you're the other guy, you don't have to worry about anything except for like where you line up your attacks. They don't actually overlap that much.
Oh yeah, they actually do. Cho has got an attack that is sort of linked to goal stuff. Like Cho throws out a bomb, and in order for that to explode, it has to be targeted by Gal. Gal has to press a button at the right moment for it to explode, or else it doesn't explode. So you actually have to work together. You have to pay attention to what the other is doing. So they actually do demand a lot of attention from the 2 players playing Cho'Gall.
You're right. You have to pay attention, but you don't have to necessarily say, like, throw the bomb now, or stuff like that.
That's true.
What I mean is, like, team play is great, but it doesn't feel like a burden, like, that character is absolutely broken if you do play it with a random person.
It is, yeah. It is fun, though. Like, the whole concept is hilarious.
Oh, God, yeah. Well,
not only that, but even, like, the way they spread the character at first, they kind of had a little viral thing going on where the only way for you to actually get him on your inventory was to play with a person that already had him as Cho'Gall.
Yeah, it was completely free. You just had to play with somebody else. True. That made all the in-game chat channels insufferable, though.
It's true, because after you got him, you had to give him to somebody else to make money. So it was just like everybody was like, "Who needs Cho'Gall?" Nobody, because everybody has him.
Yeah, I didn't really do the quests. I didn't care about 2,000 gold. Like, I play so much that I can just do the daily quests and get the same amount of gold in a week. So
yeah. And by now, your chances are pretty much zero.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. Multiplayer stuff for me. I really like Jackbox Party Pack 2, which I guess is sort of cheating because it's basically the first one.
Quiplash, though.
But, yeah, that's true. Quiplash is a lot of fun, and so is Fibbage. I like that game just because of its universal appeal. I mean, all you need is a cell phone. Everybody's already got one. So really, no matter who you have in the space that you want to play that game multiplayer, everybody's going to have a good time. And I like games like that with just universal appeal.
So much fun to play with friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And I mean, it's fun to play with anybody, like your grandma or your little brother or anybody. And I like that. I think that's really cool. Like people who don't like video games at all, you can get them to play that and have a good time.
Yeah.
Also like, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes.
Oh God, I know about this.
Yeah, so basically you have the computer, one person sits at the computer and they're trying to defuse a bomb, and then all the other players have their manuals open trying to give instructions to the person at the computer. So it's like just this real oddball communication thing. Like, how many wires? 4? Which one of them's yellow? Okay, this one. Which one of them's red? Like, you just have to sort of work together, and they're reading through a manual trying to tell you these different instructions to, defuse this bomb. If you mess up a certain number of times, it explodes. It's cool. It's a really interesting multiplayer dynamic. I mean, there's a mini version of that in the Jackbox Party Pack, but it's not quite as good.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you just kind of like assign people roles, like you're in charge of this section of the bomb and you're in charge of this, and you do wires and you do buttons. But even when you do that, you'll have like the person who's on buttons, like just a little bit too slow. So that the person on wires tries to start honing in on their territory. And you're like, no, stay where you're at. 'Cause I still have wires, dude. Like, just calm down.
Man, that game must get progressively more fun the more beer everybody's had.
Oh, geez.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely true. There's a lot of yelling and stuff like that. Those are definitely my standout multiplayer experiences. I didn't play a lot of the, besides Heroes of the Storm and Rocket League, I didn't play a lot of the, like, get online and play with other people kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, you got into Counter-Strike briefly, didn't you? But that's not a game.
That is definitely not a 2015 game. No, yeah, but yeah, a game's awesome though. Yeah, so I think that's my multiplayer stuff there.
Yeah, I think I've had everything.
All right, so those are the standout multiplayer games of 2015 as voted on by Select Characters.
Onto the not onto the last one now, right?
Yeah, this is the big one.
So, I guess this is the end of our special end of the year Game of the Year episode, and I think it is time to talk about our favorite game of this year, like the one that stood above all of them. And I think they're all games that we've already mentioned on this show, but I think we should give like one game some extra time in the spotlight. And even though this game didn't have the best story in my opinion, and it didn't have the best mechanics, I still think it's the game that had the most impact on me this year. So I'm going to pick Life is Strange as my favorite game of 2015.
I think that's a good pick.
I think so too.
From what I've seen of it, I think that's a good pick.
Yeah.
I know there's people out there who will argue with you about that, but
there's people on this podcast who would argue with you about that.
Let me tell you that there are people online who have argued with me over this.
I can't.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's tough to approach that argument, right? Like, how do I tell you that your opinion is wrong, incorrect? Like, that seems like a really hard stance.
Well, if the internet is anything to go by, if you do not share their opinion, you are automatically wrong. So that's how they justify it, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Am I a martyr for really liking that game when everybody tells me that my love for that game is not justified? I don't know.
I don't know, man. I want to tell you that, but like, how I have no like traction in that to tell you not to like a thing you like.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, it's subjective. You can't really tell someone that what they're feeling after playing a bit of interactive media, that what they're feeling is not justified at all.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Some people even I had to review that game, and then some people even went as far as to say like, "Well, you've misscored this game." Like, what? Yeah, whatever. I love that game, and I will continue to love that game. And I'm so sad that I'll never be able to play it again for the first time. So there's a little part of me in the back of my mind that's hoping for amnesia, so I can do it all over again because it was fantastic.
Wow,
that's worth it.
That's a way of dictating Game of the Year, like your desire to give yourself irreparable brain damage.
Yes. If I want to put myself in significant personal harm in order to play that game again, I think that pick is justified for me. So yeah, Life is Strange.
Good.
There you go.
Yeah. As long as you don't end up in, like bedridden, and then Chris from the future has to pay you a visit. That's like the bad outcome.
That would be pretty fucking terrible.
If you ever do get amnesia, I'll just tell everybody, hey, it's okay. Chris told us one time that he wanted this to happen so he can play Life is Strange again.
It's okay. He'll have a good life. He'll be able to play Life is Strange yet again. All right.
Ryan, what was your favorite game of this year?
Mine, Rocket League is going to be my favorite because of it's not my favorite to play, but it's my favorite because of all things considered, like things like limited time, I can just hop in and play a game for like 10 minutes, and just the ease of entry because I can pretty much hand a controller to anybody and say, hey, this is soccer with cars, and here's the basic controls, and they'll be able to play alongside you. They may not be the best at the game at the beginning, but anybody can get it.
Yeah.
And so just when you consider all things, I think Rocket League is a standout for me.
Yeah, I'm fully behind that one. Fantastic game.
It is a very rare person who picked up Rocket League and didn't have fun with it.
Yeah.
Whether they played it for an hour or 100 hours, everybody I've seen come into contact with that game had a blast.
I get not playing it for hundreds of hours, but I don't get not playing it for 1 hour, you know?
Yeah.
So
definitely worth experiencing.
Yeah, for sure.
My favorite game of the year, Metal Gear Solid 5. That's a pretty clean pick for me. I mean, that game is it's mechanically well done. Story beats are really good. Actually, like, emotionally impactful at a couple points, which is something that doesn't happen very often for me with video games.
Yeah, no kidding.
And, yeah, I mean, like, despite, there are criticisms to be made about that game, but it's, I think, more about, like, what is lacking. But that's something that, I mean, like, what's there is so good that I think to like, ruminate on that kind of stuff is a wasted exercise.
Mm-hmm. I'm quite surprised that's your pick. I sort of expected a less flashy game.
Yeah, that was the only big title this year that I really liked. But man, when I liked it hard. I mean, that was like 2 weeks of my life was just playing Metal Gear and just having a great time with it. I like a lot about it. I mean, like the shooting is good, the sneaking is good. It's just like everything about that game is so well executed, and it does things that I think are incredible. I mean, that game changes itself multiple times as you play through it. Like, it changes the way that you interact with it, and that's so rare to see these days.
Yeah.
That I just think it's incredible.
Leave it to Kojima to figure something out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That guy has got a strange mind, and he's got a very good mind for mechanics and stuff. So, whatever you think of Metal Gear Solid, they are interesting, to say the very least.
Oh, gotcha. And I think that's a huge part of it, is that it's so fresh and so different that it's just not like anything else I played. And
yeah,
for me, I mean, innovation and interesting new things are one of my favorite parts about video games, and that game had it in spades. Mm-hmm. It is like the ultimate sequel to Mario 64.
Wait, okay, could you?
Nope.
No,
that's it.
No, all right.
It's a good point. No, because Mario 64 was such a deviation from the standard Mario formula, but they did so many things right on it. It's kind of
that's not true.
It's not
true?
I mean,
yes, that's true, but that's not what I'm getting at. My point is, in a very small scope sense, like the going to the same stage but having different objectives within it. That's my thread that ties it to that.
Right.
Like, I like it because it exists on its own as a ridiculous statement, but like that, the ability of going to the same location but trying to do something different there every time is one of the compelling things about Metal Gear Solid to me, and I remember that being one of the compelling things about Mario 64.
See, Chris, if you want somebody to give you a good answer, you have somebody else give you a wrong answer.
Keep that in mind. Yeah, good pick, man.
So, Enrique, what's yours?
Man, I don't really have a game of the year, and I hesitate to even use that terminology because there's so many games I enjoyed for different reasons. Like, most recently, I am still enjoying the crap out of Fallout 4, even though I would probably say it has a really weak story, and the mechanics aren't really all that impressive, or, they don't really do anything especially well. Mm-hmm. But there's just something about the game that I've been having a blast with playing, whether it be walking around, seeing like the post-apocalyptic landscape, just filling out the quest log and knocking them out one at a time, switching out party members, going from area to area, finishing out the little mini stories you get, or finding unique enemies and weapons. It's just, there's so little to the game that I think that's why I'm enjoying it so much, because of the fact that I can kind of just do my own thing and I'm having fun with it. It's the kind of game where I get home from work, I can walk the dog, and I can sit down for like 2-3 hours and just hammer out a Fallout session, not do anything, and still have more fun than I have playing something else. So I'd probably say that's one of the contenders for Game of the Year for me, just because of how much fun I've been having with it, period.
Yeah.
Other than that, I would say, I'd almost say the Rising Tide expansion for Sid Meier's, mainly because the Civ series for me, it's the paramount, the culmination of like that one more turn kind of like style. where you can't put it down for whatever reason. And when Beyond Earth first came out, I felt like it was lacking that. There wasn't that impulse to keep playing it for another round or another round. But with Rising Tide, they kind of smoothed out so many little kinks that it has that when I sit down and play it, I'm constantly finding myself saying one more turn, and before I know it, it's been 200-something turns. It's dark outside. I'm like, crap, I need to put this away right now.
Yeah, I understand that draw that Sid Meier's games have.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I hesitate to say they're Game of the Year material just because, again, like they didn't. I don't think they have a wide appeal necessarily, but for me, they're games that are keeping me playing for a lot longer than most.
I mean, it's up to you, man.
Yeah,
I mean, right. It's just like whatever you liked the most. If there was an objective way to like measure this stuff, I could tell you Chris was wrong, but there's not. So
not this again.
I mean, it's just whatever you like the most. Like there are no wrong answers, I don't think.
See, I'm pretty sure I'd be saying XCOM 2 if it had come out originally. It was supposed to, but we're going to have to wait till February for that.
I'm already looking forward to that, because I'm sort of looking forward to that game, actually. So if everybody has said their favourites of this year, do you guys want to look forward to next year a bit before we go?
XCOM
we
2, baby.
Yeah, honestly, right now, XCOM 2 would be the highlight for me.
Yeah.
I think for next year, the thing I'm most excited about is it's not really released, but DayZ is supposed to go into beta, and I think that's what I'm most
officially?
pumped for. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well, their goal is by the end. I think not by the end of 2015. Maybe it was first quarter 2016. They intend to go to beta. So.
Man, looking at like what they've added in the game now compared to how it started off, man, that game has made an insane amount of progress.
Yeah, I mean, the common thought is that, I mean, progress is at a snail's pace, but if there's a time to go back and play it, it's right now. 0.59 is an awesome patch. I know I say that about every patch. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good, but 0.59 is the patch to come back to if you haven't played DayZ in a while. Performance is a lot better. They've added, I mean, ton of new content, and it seems like things are starting to ramp up a little bit. Like they're getting a little further along. So,
you know what?
Yeah,
I'm going to give it a go soon.
Are Cannibal Tribes still a thing?
What's that?
Are Cannibal Tribes still a thing?
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Cannibal Tribes?
Because I remember the last time I played was, I forget what version it was, but they actually included cannibalism where you could kill a human player and skin them, and then you can actually get human meat, and that in turn could be cooked and eaten.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
It's amazing.
I want to say that was.
And 2016, I mean, 2016 is the big VR push, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It
like,
should be, yeah. I think that's when a lot of like I don't know about the Oculus per se, but I know a lot of like the third-party ones are going to be coming out with theirs.
Can't not mention that. That's the thing that I am most excited for, period, and in general.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that PlayStation.
I'm not gonna
VR.
lie, man. Playing Elite Dangerous has made me like severely want a VR headset just for that kind of gameplay.
Yeah, definitely. And there's like rumors that my most anticipated game of 2016, which is No Man's Sky, is going to be released with the PlayStation VR headset. It's just a rumor, but Jesus,
that'll be interesting.
I'll be completely fine if that happens. I'm willing to shell out a pretty penny just for that experience, because I said it before, Elite Dangerous feels like the training grounds for No Man's Sky, and I really enjoyed Elite Dangerous, so I'm now more than ever looking forward to playing No Man's Sky, and if that's with VR, awesome. Absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to know what that is. I mean, I haven't tried it, so I have like no idea what that is. It's just a giant question mark.
What, No Man's Sky?
VR in general.
VR.
I've never had a chance to put one of those headsets on, but I just look at it and it seems so incredible.
Yeah.
Dude, I got the pleasure to try one at PAX South last year, and they were actually demoing it with, I want to say it was, what was the horror game of the Asylum?
Oh,
Silent Hill?
no.
Fatal Frame?
No.
Newer one.
Amnesia?
No, newer.
No. Not, but it's along the lines
Tokyo
of Amnesia.
Jungle.
Yes.
Tokyo Jungle VR simulation, awesome. It escaped me what it was, but you only had like I think like a 5-minute demo of it, but it felt like a sensory overload playing it because the tracking is actually really solid in terms of like coordinating with your eye movement, but it really does something for the immersion factor of it, and just having that headset and being completely immersed in like a horror game setting. I mean, you feel the adrenaline pumping, you start sweating, you feel your heart kind of pounding. It really does wonders for that kind of immersion, and I cannot wait until that's actually implemented to a lot more games that we have.
It's Outlast, by the way.
Outlast, okay.
I was not going to guess that one.
You know, because that sounds like more like an adventure game.
No, it sounds like that car racing game. It sounds like a car racing game.
Or that could be it as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, 2016 is going to be an exciting year.
Yeah, I think so, man. That VR, that is...
Game changer.
I hope so. I really, really hope so, because that might take gaming to the legit next level.
Do you think it'll be like adopted to that point, or is it going to go like kind of what the motion gaming was?
I don't know. Like the push behind VR seems a lot bigger.
I think it'll be a pretty big thing.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll explode. Like, I don't know if it's going to hit the scene and just like spread and just explode, but I know that it's not going to go away.
Yeah,
like I'm confident that in its tenaciousness, like it's always going to be there. Now, like, will it?
There's still like that hesitation that I have that it's going to end up like the Kinect, where it's going to make a big splash when it first comes out, and then the water's just going to get tepid.
No, I don't think so, because the Kinect has faded away. Like the Kinect is basically gone, you know. Yeah. And I don't think that's going to happen to VR. I mean, it might sit in the background for a while they work out. You know, how do we do this? What do we do with this? How does this work? Like all the little problems and things. But man, like I really don't think it's going anywhere.
HoloLens isn't scheduled for 2016, is it?
I don't know, 2016 or 2017. It's in the not too distant future, at least. But
because I'm also psyched for that one. Ever since somebody brought up the idea of having like a virtual like game space for games, like, for tabletop games.
Yeah, it looks good in principle, doesn't it? Like the couple of demos that they showed with the Minecraft stuff. That looks really cool.
Fuck Minecraft. I want to play like the old Shadowrun or like Dungeons and Dragons with like that kind of layout.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
I just want to project my TV to be the size of my entire wall
and play Temple Run on it.
Definitely. Uja, am I right?
Yeah.
It's got to come back.
The way of the future.
But no matter what amazing, exciting things happen or come down the pipeline in 2016, we will be here to talk about it.
Definitely. It's been a great first year. Well, it's not a full year, but, just going to pretend like it is.
First
year.
Take it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, everybody, for listening and sticking around and tuning in every week. It means the world to us. And we've got some plans in the works to make Select Characters better next year than it was this year. We want to do more stuff with the website. We want to do more stuff with the YouTube channel. So yeah, we're just going to work on that over the break, and hopefully we'll have more news for you soon on that. But really, sincerely, thank you for making this something that we actually look forward to every week. You're all awesome.
That's true. That's absolutely true. This has been like a surprising amount of fun.
Yeah.
It really, really has. And,
yeah.
Everybody who listens and everybody who watches the videos and just like all the words of encouragement and stuff has just been really incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have a strong enough vocabulary word to like actually wrap up and encompass how cool this is, because it's great. And all of you people out there listening make it possible. And that's incredible. So if you have highlights from 2015, you can send them in to selectcharacters@gmail.com, or you could post on our subreddit /r/selectcharacters. Tune into our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff. We're going to take a 2-week break, and we'll be back in January or something like that.
Yeah, and it's going to be we'll be back on the 6th of January next year.
Sweet. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next year in 2016.
All right. Have a great holiday season, and goodbye.